Hello, hello. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesday. Hello, welcome to Wind Down Wednesday with your host, Queen Juicy, aka Michelle BB. Hello, how are you guys? So, welcome to Wind Down Wednesday. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you. Please like and subscribe on my channel. So, today we are going to talk about some great things going on. So, today I am drinking a wine that I have already showcased, right? I don't have a new wine. This weekend I'm going to go to a winery. I've got some wineries I'm going to visit this weekend, and I'm going to have some new wines for you guys for us to check out. But today I do not. So, but I am drinking. So, I hope y'all got some wine too, because I have some wine. So, I am having Earl Stevens Trapiscato. This is 18% alcohol. Again, I've had this before, but I'm finishing this off. I'm going to the winery this weekend on Saturday, so I will be able to showcase some new wines. I'm going to this winery that I've never been to before. I'm excited about it. But if you didn't tune in when I had this before, this Earl Stevens Trapiscato is 18% alcohol, and it's a really, really good one, guys. So if you are out there today, please make a comment. Let me know that you hear. If you can hear me, let me know. Great. So in today, we have to play our song, our Wind Down Wednesday song, the my favorite song that we're going to play for you. And we have to get that done today. So how are you guys out there? It's been a couple weeks. Last week I had some technical difficulties. Thank you for everyone who stayed on and joined in my live. I was on the road, so last week I had another event that I went to called Rock the Crowd with my girl DJ Tasha Beats. It comes on at 8 o'clock immediately after this broadcast, and I was at that event for her. Shout out to DJ Zero, who was rocking it, and Meech the DJ. They are some young DJs in the city of Cleveland that are doing amazing things and did a really amazing job last week. If you get a chance, go check it out. It was really, really awesome. So today, but it's not a Wind Down Wednesday unless we play our Wind Down Wednesday song. So here we go. Drinking of the wine, wine, wine. Drinking of the wine, wine, wine. Drinking of the W-I-N-E. Drinking of the wine. It must have been 10,000 years. We've been drinking on the wine. All right, y'all. So I have to play that. That's my Wind Down Wednesday song. Very good wine. I hope you got your glass of wine too. Leave in the comments what you drinking on, what you sipping on today. So today I want to talk about red flags. Red flags, y'all. That's what we're talking about today. So I am going to share with you guys something that I seen. So for you guys that know me, today, this season is Taurus season, and from April 21st to May 14th, Mercury is in retrograde. For those of you that follow astrology, you know that Mercury in retrograde is when the planet appears to stop, switch direction, and move backwards in the sky. Key word being that it appears, it doesn't actually really happen. It's just an illusion, right? It's an optical illusion based on where the earth is placed, right? However, the energy that you feel is really it's a lot of different energy going on during this time. And a lot of times for me, it's a season of, Mercury is about communication. It's about the planet Mercury is named after the Roman messenger god. who was just basically a messenger about traveling, communication, transport. So when I think of Mercury, that's what I think about, communication. And for the most part, a lot of times when Mercury is in retrograde, for me, I always find myself in a state of revisiting, reevaluating, and re-examining life. So, and its decisions, right? So I saw this post from this lady named Miss Ivy Chandler. She's a licensed independent social worker out in Akron. She has her own counseling and mentorship program called Living Well Counseling Services. I'm going to actually post that later on in my comments, but she has this Living Well Counseling Services, and she shares, if you go to her page, Ivy Chandler, follow her. She has a really good information that she shares on her page, and so she's somebody I follow. And she posted this meme, I guess, for lack of a better term, and I found it to be and she posted it about red flags. And so today's topic is going to be red flags. Thank you, Miss Ivy, for allowing me to use your information and to share it with the masses. A lot of times when it comes to relationships, we find ourselves, it's been going around the internet, red flags. And a lot of times we miss the red flags that we encounter when it comes to people. And I'm just not talking about romantic relationships. I'm talking about a lot of different type of relationships. We can talk about, work relationships, relationships with your parents, with your siblings, spouses, partnerships, even friendships. It's a lot of times that we miss some of the red flags that are sometimes an issue for us in our community and just causes problems in our relationships, and in our friendships, partnerships, right? And a lot of times as women, I find that just people in general, we ignore red flags based on a lot of different social issues and a lot of different social things that cause us to miss the red flags, right? And one of the things that Miss Ivy shared on her meme that I thought was kind of profound that we don't really talk about or think about is how our family history plays a part in the unhealthy behaviors that we sometimes have. And a lot of times when it comes to family trauma survivors, we struggle to identify red flags in dating patterns or even friendships, right? And I wanted to talk about that because I think that it is so profound. I know that we oftentimes find ourselves, people in general, in cycles of or situations where it's not healthy and that it can even be toxic. And a lot of times we allow ourselves to be in these type of relationships basically because it's familiar. The red flags are familiar. It's something that we can identify with. And because we have normalized it, because we've seen these type of behaviors in our family, right? In our family origin. And I wanted to talk about red flags and how they affect us in our life and how we don't see them. So I'll use myself for example. I grew up in a two-family household. My parents were young parents. They got married. I think my mom was 16 and my dad was 18 and when they got married. And so I grew up in a household where my parents would argue a lot. I grew up in a family with a lot of brothers and sisters, so we were loud when we talked. And I watched my parents argue a lot. We don't understand how that type of behavior, arguing, my mom is a very passive, meek type woman. That doesn't take away from her strength because there's strength in meekness. Shout out to my mom, but she was very a meek woman, very calming, and mild mannered. My father and my father's side of the family, they're more aggressive. So I watched my father, who has a very dominant personality, dominate my mom. And my mom always was a peacemaker. She was always the communicator, always trying to make peace in the household and make light of situations, even when the relationship in the situation was toxic, right? So that's what I grew up watching. And I did not realize how much those behaviors affected my relationships with, people that I've been in relationships with, but also how it affects my interaction, even in my friendships or even with coworkers. So I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and one of my really big things, because I grew up in a household where people hollered a lot, one of the things that I cannot tolerate, and it's very hard for me to tolerate, is when people holler. I don't like to be hollered at. If we're having a disagreement or we're having a problem, you cannot holler at me. If you holler at me, then it causes me to shut down, because I grew up in a household where there was a lot of hollering. My grandmother was a argumentative person, and she hollered a lot, and so did my father. So if my father hollered at me when I was a child, I would have a complete mental breakdown. I would be crying. I would be upset. I couldn't express myself anymore. I was shut down. And I was having a conversation with someone, and they started to holler. And I felt I experienced that same experience that I did as a kid when my father would holler at me. And it kind of shut me down. And even in my work relationship, my first supervisor that I ever had, he was a male, very strong, masculine male. And, whenever there was something that was done wrong or he didn't like, he would holler. And for him, it was a normal thing that he did. But for me, I completely broke down in tears the first time he hollered at me. It was something he needed me to do, and I didn't do it correctly, and he hollered at me. And I completely had a meltdown, and he couldn't understand, like, why are you crying? Why are you upset? But it was because of the trauma that I experienced as a child being hollered at. It is something that, and we don't really understand. And in relationships that I have been in, found myself would shut down. I would not even tolerate if a man hollered at me. Like I became angry. As I became an adult, I no longer cried about it, but I would become very angry, argumentative, like aggressive. And it was because of the trauma that I experienced as a child with, arguments and hearing hollering in the house. It happens. I don't know if you guys have experienced that, but that is something that I experienced. And we don't realize how those things affect us and shape us. And on the flip mode of that, I myself, in return, became a hollerer. I'm a person that hollers sometimes. When I get excited, I'm loud. When I'm angry or mad, I get even louder. These are things that I didn't even realize that I actually took on some of those same traits that were, if someone does it to me, it's a trauma to me, right? And so those are some of the things that I recognize, that how our family dynamics, our family history plays a part in the behaviors we accept and the red flags that we ignore. We oftentimes, when we talk about red flags, right? We think about cheating. But even growing up in my household, I grew up in a household where all of the men were cheaters. Not necessarily in my direct household, but even, like I grew up watching, my uncles cheat on their wives, have the girlfriend come over sometimes, or another woman come over sometimes that wasn't their girlfriend. And that behavior was normal. I have in my upbringing, and it carried over into an adult feeling like it was okay, or like all men cheat. That's what they do. All men cheat. I grew up with that experience. I'm the same way. I'm the same way. Do not holler at me. That is a problem for me. I grew up watching men be cheaters. I grew up thinking that all men cheat. It took me being an adult and being in a relationship where a man doesn't cheat or did not cheat, to feel like, hey, maybe it is possible where there, and to see healthy relationships, people have healthy relationships where they were faithful to one another. Um, Most beautiful relationship. It's a woman, her Pastor Johnson and his wife. Pastor Johnson just recently passed away. My condolences to his family. But he was an example of a man who loved his wife, his family. His example that he set before his family was one of faithfulness and care and love. And he showed that to his congregation, to his community. He practiced that. And those relationships you will see in his family when you went to his funeral, if you watched it or you saw it or you're listening. He was a very loved man. He fathered, he had a lot of children, he had a lot of grandchildren, and even children that he raised that weren't his biological children, that he gave a lot of love to. A lot of times we struggle with identifying negative behaviors because we see them as healthy. We grew up with watching these behaviors, and we typically learn to cope and deal with these type of negative behaviors because we think that it is normal. How many of you guys out there have watched a family member or seen a family member exhibit um, behaviors that you know is not normal in your household per se, but in their household is normal, and they've just learned to cope with it? In my profession, I've watched kids think that it's normal, that abuse is normal. Um, Being hit or picking a switch or being beat on or being called stupid or ugly or dumb. They grew up thinking that that was a normalized behavior until they came around or was experiencing something different. I'm going to take a sip on that. A lot of times, red flags become difficult to spot if they mimic the behaviors that you're used to. So I use myself for an example. I was in a relationship with someone who basically was very controlling in my past. He was a very, very controlling man. He didn't want me to go anywhere. He did not want me to be around family. He was intimidated by my friends or people I was in conversation with. And I'm bringing this up because a lot of times people, first relationships, their first romantic or general relationships, continue the same unhealthy patterns that they learned in their childhood. So, my father was very controlling. My mother could not have company over at the house. He did not want people in his home. Part of that was because of the profession that he was in. He couldn't trust a lot of people. And in order to keep us safe, he didn't want a lot of people around. However, my mom, being this big, bubbly, happy, want to have friends and people over, she could not or did not, she had to conform to this type of behavior. And in her conforming to this, it made her unhappy, of course, but she did it. So for me, growing up in a household where you didn't have company, people didn't come over to your house, maybe like one or two friends was allowed to come over my house or someone that my mom babysit. But outside of that, I wasn't allowed to have a lot of company. And so I grew up in a household where it was not normal to see people come over, or it was normal for a man to be controlling and tell you what you can and can't do. Um, and in my sibling group, we all interpret that how we grew up differently. For me, my first relationship mimicked the relationship of my mom and my dad, which means that it was very much a lot of emotional trauma, emotional abuse. at the hands of a lot of hollering, a lot of you can't, what I can and can't do. And I thought that if the more that I conformed, the more that that relationship would be successful. But the more I conformed, the worse that it got, right? Until I realized, like, oh, this is crazy. Some of my siblings, they became the complete opposite, and they became exactly what they mimicked the behavior of my father, and they became the more controlling ones in the relationship, which means that they did not have company at their homes. They were very controlling. If they couldn't control the situation, it was a problem. So a lot of times you will take on those behaviors that you grow up in, and you will normalize them in your household, and they become something that your first relationships mimic. After coming out of that, after going to counseling, after realizing that these were not normal behaviors, I was able to successfully remove myself from that type of relationship. However, this is something that we have to constantly practice because, like anything else in life, when you create a habit, when something seems normal to you, when something seems familiar to you, you find yourself in a situation where you find yourself falling back into those same traps. So how do we deal with this? How do we see red flags, recognize the red flags, and move forward? Comment, comment, guys. What do you guys think? I'm curious. In my opinion, one of the ways that you combat red flags and seeing red flags is recognizing things that are not right and that make you unhappy. All the flags are not red. Sometimes there are green flags, but in this particular situation, we're talking about red flags. So when you see a red flag, how do some of them may even be yellow? Proceed with caution, right? But that's true. Someone's posted that sometimes when you see a red flag, it means stop, do not pass, go. But a lot of times people see red flags and they just proceed because it's something that they see as normal. So when we see a red flag, how do we combat a red flag? How do we stop ourselves from falling into the trap of a red flag? How do we stop ourselves from missing the red flags? Because a lot of times we might not see it as a red flag. We may see it as like, oh, this person doesn't know any better, or we make excuses for the red flags that we see. We make it okay. We tell ourselves that I can make it better if I talk about it, or we get an understanding, or we give too many chances when we do see red flags, or like you said, yellow, proceed with caution. Very true. I think that I agree with you, Denise. We have to be true to ourselves. And I think a lot of times it's very hard to be true to yourself when you involve love, right? When you love somebody and you care about somebody and you want the best for them and you want the relationship to be successful, and there's other factors that play into it, we a lot of times, especially I think us as women, because we are nurturers by spirit, and we definitely do, we allow things to slide a lot of time in relationships when we know that we shouldn't. And how do you know the difference between letting something slide and just addressing an issue? And I think one of the ways that you know when you're just letting something slide and addressing an issue is because when a person is in the relationship with you and they make mistakes, because we're human, we're people, we make mistakes, but you shouldn't make the same mistake over and over again. If a person is making the same mistake over and over again, it's no longer a mistake, it's on purpose, and it's a red flag. I'm going to sip on that one. I would definitely be the first one to hold my hand up and say that I have been delusional in relationships. I can be honest enough with myself, honest enough in my own truth to say that I have been in relationships where I have been delusional. I'm going to sip on that one. And a lot of times we find ourselves delusional, but we allow ourselves to be because we want to have hope. You know, one of the things that I watched my mother do that I can say was a dysfunction now at this point is I watch her make excuses for my dad. I watched her make excuses for his behavior and rationalize it by pointing out his good attributes. He's a good father. He's a good provider. But it's not just enough to be a good father and a good provider. You need to be a good husband. You need to be good to the woman that you're with and you're in a relationship with. And I think one of the things that I found is that me, myself, that was one of the behaviors. And I even have to catch myself now not to do it. My mom was very much a dedicated, faithful person. And because she was such a dedicated and faithful person, she allowed herself to, she put herself in situations where she did not honor her truth. She allowed the fact that she had kids with this man to allow her to stay in a relationship that she knew for a very long time that she knew was not healthy, where it was not reciprocated. The love, the loyalty, the honesty, the respect was not reciprocated. And because he was a provider and he didn't really understand what a real relationship should be, he was delusional as well. Because a lot of times we as women will say we're delusional, but sometimes the men are delusional too, because they don't actually realize that what they're doing, they feel like if they're being a provider and they're providing for this woman, that they're doing all that they're supposed to do in that relationship. But in reality, they're not. Denise posted, sometimes we do things and let it slide because deep down inside we want things to work out. I think for the most part, most of us, when we get into a relationship, we want our relationship to work out. We want to be in a relationship where we are not giving up. I think that in our community, we are told to be committed, to stay. Different things tell us that, like even being in the church, it's like, don't give up. You got to fight the good fight. You got to keep on fighting. Love will prevail. We're told to, pray for your husband, pray for the people who do you wrong. Is that giving us the wrong impression and making us stay in relationships that are not healthy for us because we are told to not give up? Because we're told to stick in there. What is the Bible scripture? Elaine, help me out. It say, those who run the race finish the course. It's basically about, if you stay in the race, is not for the swift, it's for the ones who endure to the end, or something along those lines. I think that a lot of times we are told to endure to the end, but sometimes that end is the demise of ourselves. I'm gonna sip on that. I think that we definitely, a lot of times as women, are scared to be alone in a relationship. We're scared to let go, because I feel like, for the most part, a lot of us women, we don't like change. We like consistency. That's one of the things that I hear a lot of women say, is that we want a man that is consistent. We want consistency. So we try to lead by example by being consistent, by not giving up. I've had people tell me that, you give up too easily. Why do you let go so quickly? And then it makes you question yourself, like, should I have stayed in longer? And I think a lot of times we may see different people bring out different things in people, right? So I as a woman can be with a guy and I bring out one thing in him, right? And he may not work for me, but he get with another woman and it's a completely different scenario and situation. Every person that you get with may not be the person that brings the best in you out. And just because it didn't work for one person, it may work for someone else. So someone posted, We told to turn the other cheek. We only have two, but we let things slide by adding in those other two cheeks. That is very true. And I can't argue with that. I think that a lot of times we just allow things to go on for way too long. And we are conditioned as women to accept a man doing certain things or even relationships because we don't want to give up. I agree with you, Elaine. A lot of times we shouldn't allow ourselves to struggle in a relationship, especially. And I'm gonna just say this: relationships have problems, relationships change, people have adversity in relationships, right? We all have adversity in relationships, and that's okay to have an adversity, but it's when you're fighting by yourself. It's when you're the only one that is conceding. It's when you're the only one that is trying to make a change. And I do feel like people can have red flags and make changes, right? But you have to want to change. All red flags, and maybe a red flag, like Denise said, is to stop, don't pass, go. But sometimes it's not red flags. Sometimes it's caution flags. And I think sometimes we don't take the time to really think about that aspect either. Okay, so life is not consistent, but we can be consistent. We're consistent with our jobs. We're consistent with paying our bills on time. So why should we not be consistent? The one constant thing is in life is change. It is, but you can be a consistent person. You should have someone in your life, or if you're in a relationship with somebody, you should be able to count on and depend on that person. That is normal and natural. I agree. We shouldn't have to tolerate nonsense, but why do we? Because a lot of times we find ourselves as women and men too dealing with things that we know are nonsense and don't make sense. So John says we're not consistent. You want to join in, John? So you can talk about why we're not consistent? I think you should join in. I'm going to send you a link. And if you would like to come in and talk about why we're not consistent, I would love to hear it. I just sent you a link to your inbox, John, so you can come in and talk about from the male perspective of why we people are not consistent. And back to it, while we wait for John to join in, I want to say that I do agree with you, Denise, that relationships can be lopsided, but we have to do what's best for us and honoring our truth in a relationship. I think a lot of times when we get into relationships, we let a lot of different things control how we feel. And we let a lot of different things stop us from, like sex or money, stop us from making a decision that is best for us. And a lot of times in relationships, we lose ourselves. We lose our ability to make good, sound decisions based on love. I'm about to bring John in. Hello, my friend.
What's up?
My favorite co-host.
So you got to have me on here to give you the male perspective because
I love the male perspective. Shoot,
I be
go ahead. I
hearing
know
you
you
and
got a lot
you
to
be
say.
running with it. You be running, love. I
I
be
do.
hearing.
I can only speak from the perspective of a woman, but I definitely would love to hear yours. Shoot.
So you were saying, and I've heard this quite a bit. These women want a man that's consistent. Uh, but life, like I said, life is not always consistent. Even your job is not consistent. Even the bills you pay are not consistent. Things happen, things change. And it's very demanding, you know what I'm saying, to be with a person and they expect you to be everything they want you to be all the time. And you still have to do your own thing. You still have to worry about how you feeling and different things you have going on as a man. It's a very challenging thing. I mean, like I say, so I don't expect for somebody to always be the same way with me. It's impossible. It's impossible. People not the same way with themselves.
When I agree with you on that. When I say consistency, right? I expect for a person to show up. Now I don't expect that we never have a problem or that change doesn't happen, but that's where balance comes in, right? And I feel like when it comes to relationships, if we're both in it together, then that is the consistency. That means that we're sticking in it together no matter what happens, bad, good, bad, or indifferent. When we have change or problems arise, we're consistently staying together, sticking together to get through those problems and those challenges. Isn't that consistency?
Well, I guess that's what we should have started at. You know what I'm saying? Getting clarification of what you consider consistent, because
Mm-hmm.
I've been told that before. You know, when you started off doing this and doing that, and now you're not consistent, love, because life happened. Now I have to work 2 jobs. Now my son live with me. Now I have different situations going on, so I don't have the time that I normally would have before to spend with you. And a lot of times, you know, people don't understand that because they're used to things being a certain way. But like I say, life changed, things happen, and you
Yeah,
have to adjust to the change. And it take a mature woman to really understand that and accept it.
yeah, I definitely agree. But I think that a lot of times, people find themselves in relationships where there is one lopsided, like Denise said, where you're the one giving and that person is not putting in the same effort. We know that change is going to happen, and we know that a relationship is like a moving planet, right? It's like as the world turns, right? The sun is gonna rise and it's gonna set, um but what I think, when we look for consistent, we want to know that we can depend on you to be present, to be there, not to consistently do things to sabotage or hurt the relationship. And that's just not for men, that's just for anyone in a relationship. If you keep finding yourself in a situation where a person is constantly doing the same thing over and over again and then apologizing for it and saying they're sorry, they're not really sorry. What they're doing is they're doing what they want to do at your expense.
Yeah, no, that's what I say. I agree with that. I think it just depends on what we're talking about when we say consistency.
So Yvette just posted, a lot of the times the problem is not communicating what's going on. No one said things won't change, but communication is key and consistency. Your thoughts?
Understanding is key. Understanding is that balance. Understanding is that middle ground. We communicate all day, but if we don't have no understanding, we're just talking in circles.
Mm,
But
I would
understanding,
agree with you.
understanding mean you don't have to agree. You know what I'm saying? And I don't have to agree, but we understand each other. And that's the middle ground. And that's what we stand on. A lot of times I feel like a lot of men don't communicate because there's no level of understanding.
So
So,
I'll take
so
it one step further, because I used to say communication is key, but I have come across some situations where I was communicating exactly how I felt, or I was communicating in a situation, but they lacked the ability to understand. So not just and I would take it one step further and say it's not just enough to understand, but then to apply what you understand. Because once you understand, like, hey, this is not going to be conducive to our relationship, this behavior is not healthy, and we got to do something different. And if that person says, like, yes, I understand, we need to do something different, you are right, I hear you, I understand, but then they don't apply what they understand, then that's a problem as well.
so I'm gonna ask you this question: do you believe change come immediately, or is progressive?
I think some things can be immediate and some things are progressive. I think it works both ways. Like so I'll give you an example. If I if I cheat on you, we in a relationship and I cheat on you, and I say, and you say, hey, you cheating on me hurt me, right? Then I should be like, you know what? I don't want to hurt you. I can stop that right away. But it might be progressive if I state to you, and maybe I shouldn't have used cheating, but it could be progressive if I say to you, hey, you learned this behavior of hollering from your parents, and when you holler at me in a conversation, it shuts me down, and so now I'm having a hard time communicating with you, because when you start hollering, guess what? I shut down emotionally because I feel attacked. That may be something, because that's a learned behavior, and it may take you a little bit of time to get that right. But there are certain things that are inevitable and that you can stop. If I punch you in your face, right, and you say, ouch, that hurts, then I know I shouldn't punch you. If I punch you in your face, it's gonna hurt. But if you say don't do that again, that's something I can stop immediately, and that changes right away. Do you get what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. I, I don't know if that's necessarily the case in all situations. So going back to what you were saying, let's say same thing, you was cheating on me or whatever. Your parents, you've witnessed them. You grew up, they cheated on each other. Every
Mhm.
relationship you've been in, you cheated. So
My
now,
parents.
so
Okay.
so
Okay.
now, so now you're in a relationship with a man and he say, look, you cheating hurt me. Can you stop? And you say, yeah. And you try. And you try hard. Now, it may not seem that way because you can't see someone not trying to cheat, but from time to time, you still do. You've been this way your whole life. That's not something you could just change immediately. And if the person you with understand that you really have a problem and is willing to stick it out and work it out with you, then that's great. But people don't understand that for some situations, it's a real problem for people. Even like the other example you said, somebody punched somebody in the face. That could be a real problem, something they've done their whole life. That's why a
Mhm.
lot of these abusive relationships be hereditary in a lot of ways. They've gotten it from their parents. So to tell a person to just stop, don't do that no more. It might not be that easy for them.
I do agree that a lot of times we have learned behaviors that are hard to break because it's a cycle that we've been used to, we've adapted to, and we've normalized it. So I definitely agree with that, right? But I think that if you are a crackhead, right, you're not going to go to a crack house. Do you understand? And say, I don't smoke crack no more, but I'm just going to visit my friends at the crack house because these my homies. I've been coming over here for years, but I can control myself. I ain't gonna smoke no crack. You're not gonna put yourself in a situation where you are going to indulge, because guess what? You smell it, you thought about it, you contemplate it, you watching everybody do it around you. Is that really you trying to abstain from smoking crack if you want to be around it? Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's like we have to be mindful of the situations that we put ourselves in.
I
Because if
agree.
you're putting yourself in a situation to be tempted to do something wrong, then you already decided to do it. You just did not step out on it. So,
I was with you. I was with you for a minute.
so,
I
so
was
like
with
for
you for a
instance,
minute.
anything that we do, right? It begins with a thought. You don't just go, and I'm going to use cheating. You don't go just cheat on your partner. You don't just fall in a vagina and be like, whoa, I fell in it. I didn't mean to do it. Right. Or you don't just hop on somebody's penis and be like, oopsie, I didn't mean to do it. That doesn't happen. What happens is you planned it, you calculated it, you entertained it, you thought about it first. Everything starts in the mind. So whatever you think is exactly what you're going to do. But if you condition yourself to think differently, then you'll do differently. So I'll use this for an example. If you decided you wanted to cheat on if you say, I'm not cheating on my spouse no more because that hurts them, right? What you're going to do is you're going to say, you know what? You're not going to take the phone call from your ex and have a conversation with them on the phone about how y'all used to get down. You're not going to meet them out for drinks because you understand that is putting yourself in a situation where you could be tempted. You're not going to meditate and think on things that are wrong. You're going to set boundaries, clear boundaries, and you're going to respect those boundaries. The problem is that we make our red flags normal, and we say, hey, this is normal. No, it's not normal. You need to stop. If you want something different, you do different. You have the ability to control yourself. The problem with society and people today is we don't set boundaries, and we lack self-control. We don't want to deprive we live in a generation and in a world now where no one everybody wants instant gratification. No one wants to take the time out to practice self-control.
Okay. I think, yeah, you said a lot. I think,
I'm sorry.
I think, no, you good. I think, I agree with you on the practice self-control. I think, going back to put yourself in situations, I totally agree with that. But and I'm going to speak from a man's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The world, everything we see is from our point of view. You stroll on Instagram, you see half naked women. You watch TV, you see half naked women. You go to the grocery store, you see half naked women. You go to work, you see half naked women. You see this all the time. Everybody twerking right now. You see this all the time.
They've been twerking since the 90s. What you talking about? They was P-popping back in the day.
Yeah, but see, it went viral now, so it's on another level.
Right.
What I'm saying. So you always tempted as a man, always tempted. And I feel like, and again, I feel like it's different for men. No, I'm not saying that I don't agree with cheating. I really don't even like using that word to be 1,000 with you, but I don't agree with it. I feel like if you make an agreement with a woman, you should honor it. And I also feel like if you feel like you can't be with one woman, you shouldn't make that agreement. Because I honestly feel like a lot of men don't understand themselves, and a lot of women don't understand men, our true nature, and what we're put on the planet for, and how we design genetically. And that's the part that a lot of people don't like talking about.
Well, speak on it, because you know I'm always about the smoke.
Well, the thing is, again, and we talked about this before, I said it before, monogamy is not, that is a European concept that was placed upon us. That was not our true nature.
I just want to say one thing, because I want to go back to something that you said. You said that men are constantly being tempted, right? Everywhere he go, it's all the temptation of women. Why do you think that women don't have the same temptation? Like, we're constantly, if you're an attractive or a beautiful woman, I can tell you, I have countless guys in my inbox all the time that are sending me, hey, beautiful, let me take you out, let me do this. And I'm just using this as an example, but I don't respond to it because it's why? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, so I think that a lot of times men get it misconstrued and think that women don't have the same temptations that you have. No, we have the same temptations. We just don't act upon it.
Because it's not in your nature to. And another part of this,
that is not even true. That's not true, though.
The world is from a man's point of view. If you look, everything you see, it is exploiting women. everything, supermodels, bathing suits, you don't see that many half-naked men like that on the level that we do. It's different.
Okay.
And it's been like that since the beginning of time.
I would definitely agree with you that it is a more male dominated society as far as women objectifying themselves, showing their bodies. And you know what? And I hate to even say objectifying, because I feel like as a woman, if you want to show your body off because you're proud of it and it's yours, so be it, to a certain extent, right? But I think that a lot of times it depends on what you are striving for and what you actually want. And that goes back to living your truth, right? And stating what it is that you really want. I think that so many people, and you did touch on this, so many people, period, just don't know what they want. So they just do everything and anything. They don't actually know who they are. Their identity is caught up in social media, or is caught up in what other people think of them or what people say about them. And we just are not really true to who we really are and who we want to be. And we have even been conditioned by society to deny ourselves of what we really want and to accept what is given or what is available.
We don't know who we are. We don't know what we were designed for.
I don't disagree with that. I don't
Yeah.
disagree with that. I think as a whole, as a society, maybe we don't. And if we did, maybe we would operate differently.
If we understood each other, if we understood uh, what a man is, what his purpose is, how does he feel, how does he think, why does he do certain things, and vice versa for women as well. If we fully understood that, then I think it would make a better relationship between a man and a woman. But the thing is, a lot of times everything is driven by what society has said, what religion has said, and not what the two individuals have, and what who we are individually genetically. People don't look at it on that level. And the thing is this: we are the same in a lot of ways, but we are very different. And a lot of people get this equality thing mixed up with the same. Equality does not mean the same. And that's the part that, well, if the man could do it, the woman, no, you're not loved. That's not even your lane. You're not even designed to do that. Why would you do that? That goes against your very being of a woman.
So let me just say this. So I've been hearing a lot of people, and we're going to kind of touch on something a little different. But I have been hearing a lot of people talk about the true nature of a man is not to be with one woman, but to be with multiple women, right? And what I find is that they say that, right? But in reality, some men cannot handle being with multiple women, because if you're going to be with multiple women and somebody feels neglected or cheated or slighted, then do you really have the capacity to satisfy two women? Because I think a lot of times men have the ideology like, you might have the desire for multiple women, but can you really handle, take care of, provide for, be supportive of multiple women? And I think that's where we get it misconstrued. Yes, it might be in a male's nature to desire multiple women, but we also know that we can't act on every desire that we have.
I don't, you said desire. It's hard for me to, it's who you are. It's your nature. It's, as a man, it's your
But
nature. It's
when you
you.
say,
It's not like a, I really want this thing. No, this is something. This is when we talk
and
about.
when you say multiple, like, so, like, because I think that when people talk about polygamy or they talk about multiple partners, right? A lot of times, or just it's in a man's nature to have more than one woman. When they talk about that, right? They're talking about the desire, the feeling, the need for.
Mhm.
Am I wrong? It's not the need for. So you mean to tell me that a man feels what is the nature then? Because if you're saying that, because the nature is something that you innately feel, right? That you are driven to do by nature. It's like part of who you are as a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that not desire?
I mean, I guess you're right. I guess but the way I'm thinking of it is just like when you say desire, it's just something that you really want. I guess I'm looking at it that way. So no, I hear what you're saying.
So if it's something that you desire or something that is in your nature, right? Then you are allowing yourself, it's something that you don't have to act on. We don't act on all of our desires, right? I
We go against our nature all the time. You're absolutely
Well, we
right.
don't, and sometimes it's necessary, right? Because I might want to just be like, you done made me mad, right? I
That
mean,
ain't
we've
right.
all
That ain't
I'm
good.
just saying we have all had been in situations, and maybe it's just me. Look, maybe it's just me, but we have all been in situations where we have wanted to do something or desired to do something that we shouldn't do, right? Or it might have been in our nature to want to do something or have a desire. But when you say that it's in a man's nature to have multiple women, is it in his nature to, is it just sex, or are
No,
you saying that
no,
or is it in a man's nature to take care of, to
that too.
provide for,
That too.
to care? Because a lot of times I'm finding you may be one in 1,000, because a lot of these men, they just want to have multiple sex partners. They don't desire to really take care of, provide for, and financially be a father, a role model
And
to
that's the part I
multiple
disagree
women.
with.
Yeah,
I
I
agree with you
disagree
on
with
that.
that too. So, like, if you're saying that it's in your, is it your, so are you telling me it's in a man's nature to be a provider for multiple women? Is it in a man's nature to take care of and provide for children that may
Yes.
not necessarily be his? Is it in a man's
Hold
nature?
on. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Let's go ahead. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Is it because, I mean, like, if we're talking about reality, right? It's a lot of women who have children from a previous relationship or whatever, but he wants this woman in his life. Are you trying to be a father to these children? Are you trying to, or does this just apply to a certain demographic? Because it's a lot that comes with relationships.
So
And if
go
you're
ahead.
not going to be the whole man for this whole family, then what are we really talking about? Are we just talking about sex? Because that's
How
something
can
different.
how can you say what a whole man is? That's the first part.
I'm not saying what a whole
Sec-
man is. I'm
Second
not
part.
saying, no, no, no.
Go ahead.
I'm not saying what a whole man is. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you have to take care of the whole family. If it's in a man's nature to have multiple women, then there's a lot of different facets to a woman. We are not just sexual beings. There's a financial responsibility, there's an emotional responsibility.
So for me, when we talking about this stuff, I'm thinking more along because this is what I believe in, and I said this
Mhm.
before. I don't subscribe to anything that's under this uh, European colonialism type life.
I dig it.
You know what I'm saying? I'm spiritual. I pray to the ancestors and God. I live as close as possible to my ancestors. So my
I
thing is,
agree
when it
100%.
comes
And we on the
when we
same
talk
page
about
on that.
when we talk about taking care of a family, taking care of children, taking care of all these different things, taking care of the finances. That does not mean she get to drive a brand new Benz. She get Gucci bags. She always going out to eat. She get to go on trips with her friends. That's not what that means. And the thing is, a lot of times, the type of men that's able to sleep with multiple women are the ones that have to do all those different things too. The rich dudes, the ones that's successful. And that's not the way it was intended. So my thing is, yeah, You have men that can do that, that can take care of families and different women, all these different things. But what are you requiring? Because the women from the tribes and the villages, they said it take a village to raise a child. All of those women were sister wives, and they took care of those kids together. So it wasn't them looking at, okay, well, she got more than me and I want this and I want that. Nah, the man did his thing. He provided. This is what we do. We protect, we provide, we reproduce. That's what our purpose is. And the further we get away from that, the more things get more challenging. And the thing is this, I understand if it seemed like a lot of women feel like, okay, well, it's just about sex. It's just a feeling that men get. This is the reason why men go against their nature every day. You're talking about the one thing that everybody that you know, uncles, cousins, daddies, grandfathers, nephews, have all cheated at least one time. But then you get with a man and expect him to be nothing like no man you've ever met. That's crazy. Pastors, presidents, everybody have cheated.
So I'm going to just say this. Right? I'm not so much talking about, I agree with you that when you're in a relationship, it's not just about providing financially, right? Or like Gucci bags and taking trips and all of that. For the most part, the majority and the average man can't provide all of that, right? I'm just being real. Most people are middle class and they working and they paying their bills and they have enough to sustain themselves with a little bit left over, right? So that's not what I'm talking about. We even know that the dude with the broken man is cheating. So we're not even just talking about that. We're talking about we're talking about human nature, a man's nature. And what we're talking about, is it in a man's nature to be with multiple women? And I'm saying it is human nature, right, to have what you want. It's human nature to want your needs satisfied. We like gratification and we like being satisfied across the board, men and women, right? We want gratification and we want to be satisfied. Now, when it comes to being in a relationship, you cannot tell me as a man that you want multiple women, but you are not there and you cannot be honest and articulate what your true desires and what you really want in this relationship. If you are ever a man who lied to a woman about what your intentions are to her, then you are a deceiver, and you are not a man who desires multiple women. You are just a deceiver. So if you are telling one woman that you with her and then telling another woman you with her and they don't know about each other, you are not living your truth. What you're doing is you're being deceptive because you have no intentions on doing the right thing and being legitimate in your intentions and letting that woman make a decision for herself whether she wants to be in a polygamy or a multiple partner relationship.
Thanks.
That's number one. Number two, you cannot want something that you cannot sustain. So if you are a man who wants multiple women, but you cannot sustain both of those women financially, emotionally, and sexually, and somebody is getting cheated, then you are not being truthful and honest, and that's not really what you want. What you want is you want to have multiple sex partners, which you should find your tribe, because I don't even necessarily think that there's anything wrong with that. I feel like if you want to be with multiple people, that is your right, and I feel like you should be able to do as a person and an individual. You should be able to live your life how you want. But where a lot of men go wrong is that they lie and they deceive instead
Why
of
do
being
they lie
honest. It doesn't matter why they lie. In my opinion, I don't think it really matters why they lie, because if I tell a lie, it's not a reflection on you, it's a reflection on me. If you, for example, I'm a truthful person, right? And so I'm going to live my truth, period. I don't tell the truth for you. I tell the truth for me because I want to be my most authentic, real aspect of who I am.
I get that. And I feel the exact same way. I don't lie about nothing. I tell the truth even when it hurts people sometimes. But what I'm saying is this: understanding why a man is lying about something. One of the things I teach my son, cowards lie. If you lying, you're afraid of something. In a lot of cases, a man is afraid of losing the woman that he loves. So that's why he lied. Or he's afraid of being judged. If more men were comfortable having these type of conversations, then it wouldn't be, I would feel like, as much lying. Still, I don't think, lying is right at all.
Well, I mean, on the flip mode of that, I do agree with you. And I do think that for the most part, people do lie because they fear something. But I think that if you are a man who are being true to your intentions and true to what you really want, and you want to walk in and live your truth, you're going to be honest regardless.
You have to be.
You
Right.
have to be, because one thing that you're not going to want to do is you're not going to want to deceive anyone. You want somebody to walk into, you want to find your tribe. You want to find your tribe of people who are like-minded, who feel the same way that you feel. But you're not going to find that if you're being deceptive.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. In most relationships, real polygamous relationships, it's 100% honest. Everything is honest. And the way it normally works, the women are actually friends and they cool with each other. It's a real
It's a
family type of
partnership.
thing. Yeah. So for the guys who just doing it for the purpose of sex and just want to be with different women and the other women don't know, they still doing cheating and trying to be players. That ain't the way it's supposed to work. You know what I'm saying? But my whole thing was just explaining a man's nature. So I got to teach my class. I need to jump in the shower.
I know you do. Thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure. You
Oh
always
yeah, it's
have really
always
good,
fun.
it's always fun, and you always have some very insightful responses and conversations. So I always love it. You always welcome.
I appreciate it, love.
All right, take care now.
All
Peace,
right, I'll holler at
John.
you. Peace.
All right, y'all. So thank you, John. Thank you. So we definitely had a great conversation today. I'm truly grateful for everybody who made comments and spoke. We kind of went over our allotted time, but that's okay because when it's a party, we don't stop, right? Thank you for everybody who tuned in. Thank you for everybody who made comments and joined in. It's always a pleasure. I always find myself really enjoying doing this podcast and having these conversations, because I think it's conversations that we need to have as a community. We have to start having real dialogue and real conversations with one another so that we miss some of these pitfalls that we find ourselves in. So again, thank you so much for coming. It's always a pleasure. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Love you. Stay safe. Always stay gracious. Peace. Till next time.